Hey everyone, today we're going to look at angles and parallel lines. This is a pretty big section. It's got a lot of information that you will use in the future that's very beneficial to you. So try and make sure you're understanding these different parts of these angles. Okay, so the one thing you need to make sure you understand is what is a transversal. And a transversal is just a line that crosses any two other lines. Now what we want to think about in this particular video is the transversal is going to intersect parallel lines. And it creates specific relationships between those angles. Now the first postulate we're going to look at is what's called the corresponding angle postulate. And what that says is if two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then each pair of corresponding angles is congruent. Now what that means is these two here are your parallel lines. Okay, so we've got our parallel lines there. You got this line that crosses the middle, and it says each pair of corresponding angles is congruent. Well, what corresponding means is right here you have a group of four. And we'll take one for example. Over on the right hand side you have another group of four. Well, you find the ones that are in the exact same spot, so like angle 3, and those are congruent. So you'd say angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. And then you have angle 2, and that's in the exact same spot as angle 4. So angle 2 would be congruent to angle 4. And you can go through this pattern. You've got 5 and 7, so angle 5 is congruent to angle 7. And then finally, you see that the 6 and the 8 are in the same spot, so angle 6 is congruent to angle 8. And so you've got four sets of angles that are going to be congruent based on these corresponding angles in these two pairs. And it's just the exact same angles in those exact same spots. Okay, so to kind of see what type of problem they could give you, it's something like this. So angle 1 is 115 degrees. We want to find every other angle. Well, if you think about it, because of corresponding angles, angle 3 has to be 115 degrees. Right? Now, where can we go from here? Well, look at 1 and 7. What do you notice about those? They're vertical. And in the last video we saw vertical angles are congruent. So that has to be 115. So that means that angle 5, either because of vertical angles or corresponding points, or parts, also is 115. Now you've got these two angles that are known in each group. Got to find the other ones. Well, think about 1 and 2. 1 and 2 create a linear pair. They're a straight line. So they have to add up to 180. So if 1 is 115, that means 2 has to be 65. Because of corresponding, 4 would have to be 65. Because of vertical, 6 would have to be 65. And then because of vertical or corresponding, 8 would be 65. And now we've got all of those parts. Okay, so that's one way that you can do this just based on corresponding angles. Now the next three are three other options that you can use. The first one's what's called alternate interior. Now interior means inside the parallel lines. So if you look at the picture down on the bottom, here's my parallel lines. Inside of that would be this area here in orange. Okay, that's the interior. So interior, alternate angles. Alternate means it crosses over your transversal. So if two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, each pair of alternate interior angles are congruent. So inside crossing the transversal, alternate interior would be 3 and 7 and 2 and 6. Those are alternate interior. Now consecutive interior. Again, we're still on the interior. Consecutive means on the same side as the transversal. So they do not cross over. So for this one it says each pair is supplementary. So if we look at these inside here again, so we're looking inside, they're on the same side of the transversal. For consecutive, you'd have angle 2 and angle 3. Now notice they're not congruent. Angle 7 and angle 6. And what it says is they're supplementary, meaning they would add up to 180 degrees. Alright, then the last one is the alternate exterior. Now exterior would be on the outside of these transversals. So look in there where my blue lines are. Okay, so we want alternate exterior. Alternate again means crossing over the transversal. Okay, and it says if two lines are cut by a transversal, alternate exterior are congruent. So for angle 4, you have angle 4. Across the transversal on the exterior would be angle 8. Okay, then you have angle 1, that is on the exterior. Crossing the transversal on the other side would be angle 5, and those are your alternate exteriors. Alright, so alternate interior, alternate exterior are congruent. Consecutive interior add up to 180. Alright, so here's a pretty extensive problem. It says, find the measures of each angle, tell which postulate or theorem you used. Alright, so we've got some parallel lines here. You can see the parallel lines. You also have a couple different markings that are given to you. We need to find the rest of these. Now the big key there is they have to be in relation to the parallel lines to work. Alright, so let's think about what we have. Well, you've got 62 right here. Now parallel lines would mean this group and this group here. Okay? And then it would also mean this group up here and this group down here. The blue and the green circles that are circled alone have no relationship to each other. Okay, so don't make that mistake. Alright, so here's where we start. Well, you got the 62. What is corresponding to 62? Well, angle 4 is corresponding, so that means that angle 4 is 62 degrees as well. Okay, so we've got that one. Angle 4 is 62. Okay, and I'm going to fill these in as we go so we can kind of keep track. Now if you look at angle 8 is directly across from that 62, so that's a vertical angle, so that one's 62 as well. Okay, how about 7 and 8? Well, 7 and 8 form a straight line or a linear pair, so if you do 180 minus 62, you're going to get 118 degrees, so angle 7 is 118 degrees. Okay, then if you take angle 7 and angle 12, they're vertical, so angle 12 is 118 degrees. So we've got that. Okay, looking back up at the top group, angles 4 and 3, those two things are vertical, right? So if angle 4 is 62, then angle 3 is going to be 62. Now based on what we've got here, we're kind of at a standstill. So we're going to jump across to that second group. Okay, so we're over here now. So if that angle is 38, what can you tell me about angle 9? Well, it is vertical, so it's going to be 38 as well. Okay, so here's 38. Now if you look here and here, those are corresponding. They're in the same spot. So angle 6 is going to be 38 degrees. Right? Now with angle 6 and angle 1, those two things are vertical. So angle 1 is going to be 38 degrees. Okay, so that's now marked there. With angles 10 and 13, you've got those two. They form a linear pair with either of those 38s. So that means that angle 10 is going to be 180 minus 38, which is 142. And since it's vertical, that's what angle 13 is as well, 142. Okay, so that means the last ones here are 5 and 2. Now, a couple of different ways to look at these. 5 and 2 have got a linear pair created with any of these three, meaning they have to add up to 180. Okay, you've got with this inside triangle, they have to add up to 180. So you can go through that a couple different ways. You basically add those two together, subtract from 180, and I've got 80 degrees for angle 5, which means because they're vertical, 80 degrees for angle 2, and I've now found every angle in this picture, and we're done. Okay, so that's one way that you can use these postulates and theorems. Now the last set of problems that we're going to do here are these ones. Okay, so it looks like we've got two sets of parallel lines. Okay, so we're going to mark these up. So there's parallel, and here's parallel. And what you'll see is they'll put a double marking on those if they're both parallel. Okay, so this first problem, we've got angle 5 and angle 7. So if you look at angle 5 and angle 7, they're both sitting in the same position, which means they're corresponding. Okay, corresponding angles add up to, are congruent. So since they're congruent, we set them equal. So that gives you 2x minus 10 equals x plus 15. And then you go through and solve. So minus x, plus 10, plus 10. So those cancel. That gives you x equals 25. And there's your answer. Now if they were asking you to actually find the angle, what would you do? Well, you take that and you'd substitute it in. So you go 25 plus 15, and that means both of those angles would be considered 40 degrees. All right. Now let's look at the next ones. Now we're going to assume they have no relationship to the one that we just solved. Yeah, so that's the assumption we're going to make. So angle 6 is 4 times y minus 25. Angle 8 is 4y. Find y. Alright, so let's see how this is done. And you know what? As we're looking at this, I think I may have left something out, so give me 1 second to look. Oh, never mind. I see what happened. Okay, so if you think about these, this angle here is going to be congruent to this angle here, okay, because they are complementary. All right, so we've got that. We also could say that now these two create a linear pair. So they have to add up to 180 degrees. Okay, so because these are congruent, 8 moves over to there. Okay, these two now make a linear pair. So these two values, if I were to add them together, because they're a linear pair, they add up to 180. And now you just go through and solve. So I've got 4y minus 100. Okay, distribute. Plus 4y equals 180. Combine my like terms. I've got 8y minus 100 equals 180. And then just solve this. So add 100. So you got 8y equals 280. Divide by 8. Okay, when you take 280 and divide that by 8, you end up with y equals 35 degrees. And there you go. So now if they asked you to find those values, you could take 35, substitute it back in right there, and that gives you 140 degrees. Now since these two things are supplementary, the other one would have to be 40, and there are your two answers. Okay, so alternate interior, alternate exterior, corresponding, and then consecutive interior, all these different things allow us to solve these problems either by adding up to 180 or showing as congruent. Okay, give these problems a try on your own. If you need some help, contact me online, and we'll talk to you soon.